Fear Zone, your channel for horror stories. And today's story is from Mr. Andre, who is from the city of Alfenas, which is in Brazil, and this event was in the year 2007, when Mr. Andre was 43 years old. Well, and to begin the story, I was working as a bus driver at that time, and was on the night shift. One day, I had already finished my shift, and I was already returning with the vehicle to the garage of the company. This early this morning, I left the collector who worked with me in his neighborhood, which was in a rural area. Anyway, on a dirt road, the bus that I was driving started giving problems and stopped suddenly, so I called my company to send the maintenance people to help me. Well, the attendant told me that the maintenance mechanic was already in another occurrence, and that I would have to wait. But the biggest problem was that the place I stopped was in a rural area, with a road that had little lighting and was dark, with a scary landscape, and on this dirt road, there were practically no cars passing. Although it was a scary place, I really wanted to deliver the bus and get home fast, so I decided to get off the vehicle and try to see if I could fix the engine problem myself, and I got off the bus with the flashlight in my hand and kept on working on the engine. I looked around the place and could only see the lights of a neighborhood miles ahead. But time went by, and it was almost 3 o'clock in the morning. While I was trying to fix the engine of the bus, suddenly, I started to hear some footsteps in the middle of the bush, close to where I was, and it was so quiet there that I could hear something walking in the middle of the dark bush. I was already scared of this place. Now with these noises, I got scared and got inside the bus to see what it was that was walking through the woods. I also turned off all the lights of the vehicle to make it more difficult for someone to know where I was hiding. I squatted down on a bench and kept looking at the roads and in the bushes through the glass window, either on the side, front, or back of the bus, because it could be a jaguar or some other dangerous animal, but I could not see anything. While I was trying to see something in the bushes, I started to hear a noise of something running, and it seemed like there was something walking around the bus, so I changed the window, and then I went to see what it was, and when I looked, I saw a big animal that looked like a dog, but very big. I couldn't tell what animal it was, but the coat of that animal, it was black and matted. Then I was really surprised, because I still had not been able to know what it was, and I also had not seen the face of that animal right. Then I went to another window to get a better look at that beast, to know what that animal was, and I got a better look at the creature, and I saw its face and got a big fright, and I was amazed at the face of that animal, which was very similar to the face of a man, but its eyes were very red and lit like lights, and its ears were very big and pointed, and its jaw was like a dog's. That creature was really a freak. I was shocked and frightened to see this, because it looked like a supernatural animal. But while I was watching this creature, this beast also saw me at the window of the vehicle, and it was staring at me in a strange way, and it was a look that told me that it was going to get me, and with the fright that I got, I quickly crouched down in the bus and hid myself between the seats, and I got very scared at that time and went to the back of the bus. But the animal still circled the bus outside and growled to scare me, and then went to the back door of the bus and sniffed around the outside with the intention of getting in the door. I grabbed my flashlight and threw the light on him so I could scare him, and that was the worst thing I did, and I was surprised by the beast, because he got angry with the light and stood up on 2 legs and stood like a man and growled at me in great anger. The werewolf's reaction was that he kept forcing his way through the door, but he didn't have the skills to open the door, so I ran to the other part of the bus and crouched down. But while I was hiding, suddenly I started to hear some growls from the werewolf, and it sounded like he was in pain, so I thought, maybe someone caught this beast. So I took courage and decided to see what was happening to that werewolf, and when I looked, I saw this creature rolling around on the floor, and he was moaning a lot. But on closer look, it seemed that this werewolf was coming back into human form, and soon this werewolf stood upright. He was already almost turned around, but the creature realized that I was watching him, and it ran off into the dark woods and disappeared. Then I kept looking into the darkness to see if I could see anything else strange out there. Time went by, and nothing happened, and soon the mechanic from the company arrived from a winch vehicle at the site around 5 o'clock in the morning, and all this delay was because the mechanic was fixing another vehicle on the other side of town. Well, I was very worried about the mechanic, and I told him to get into the bus quickly so that he would not be surprised by the beast, and I told him what had happened to me that early morning. As I was scared at that moment, we decided to wait until daylight to be able to do the maintenance on the bus, and when the day dawned and we saw the first rays of sunlight, we got out of the bus and tried to fix the vehicle, and while we were fixing the engine, I saw a man coming out of the bush, and he started walking along the road. He passed us. I noticed that he was barefoot, with no shoes on his feet, but he was wearing pants and a clean shirt, and I thought it was strange the way this wanderer was, for he walked in a hurry, and he looked back and forth scared of something. I called out to him to warn him of the creature, but he didn't care for me, and so he disappeared down the road. After a while, a car appeared on the road, and the driver stopped his car next to me, and he asked if we saw someone in a red shirt passing by on the road. I said I did, but the guy drove away. This driver told me that he lives in a small farm nearby, and that a wanderer stole the clothes in his backyard, and now he was looking for this suspect. After this conversation, the driver left, and the mechanic and I had to take the towed bus back to the company, and so I went home. Days passed. I continued with my work, driving the bus through the streets of the city, but one night, when I was passing by a bus, on that dirt road where I saw the werewolf, I saw a man walking down that road alone. I stopped the vehicle to warn him of the creature, but this guy was kind of scared of what I said. I realized that it was that walker I saw on the road without shoes, the day I saw the werewolf. But he did not even want the free ride that I offered him. I began to wonder why he wanted to stay in that place, which had many woods and was isolated. After this conversation, I continued my journey, but with the passage of time, with everything that happened, the werewolf, this walker, for me he was the suspect of turning this creature, and certainly he turned werewolf and stole the clothes of the farmer, that this bumpkin was hunting the walker that day. For me that's what happened. Well, if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your like. Until the next story. Fear Zone channel. And now then, let's go to today's story. Well, my name is Valdo, and this story happened to me when I was 21 years old and was in the city of Santa Luzia, which is in Brazil, and this story happened in the year 2001. And today I will tell you about something terrifying, in which I spent the greatest terror with a creature that came to surround me. And to start the story, I lived on the outskirts of town, and one day, my cousin who lived on the other side of town came to my house to pick me up by car to go to a birthday party at his house, and then I got in the car and we went together to the party. It was still afternoon, but after about 30 minutes, we arrived at my cousin's residence. I stayed at the party and met some of my relatives too, and the hours passed, and soon it was almost 2 o'clock in the morning, and with that, many of our relatives began to leave the party. I also warned my cousin that I would also leave at that time, because it was already too late for me. Anyway, my cousin agreed to take me to my house, and soon he started the car, and I said goodbye to some relatives, and then I took my way back to my residence by car along with my cousin. But while we were taking the streets, my cousin decided to cut some paths to get faster to my house. He then began to enter very dark places, where there were some dirt roads, where you could see many oxen and pastures there, because it was a rural area. But everything was quiet on that trip, until suddenly, the headlight of my cousin's car showed a strange thing, about 20 meters ahead on the dirt road, and my cousin stopped the car on the spot, because there was a very dark and very big animal, and it was pulling a calf that seemed to be dead, and this beast was trying to cross the road, but what happened was that the light from the headlight of the car confused that animal, and that creature ended up leaving that calf dead in the middle of the road, where we were passing with the car. But this strange animal that looked like a kind of dog, he ran into the bush that was next to the road and disappeared. We were frightened by this creature, because we didn't know what animal it was, and for sure it was a ferocious creature, and also at that time, we didn't know what to do, whether to take the calf off the road, or leave that poor animal there. However, my cousin drove a few more meters, and we got close to this calf, and taking a better look, we saw that the calf was still alive, but all hurt, and with this happening, we looked around the bush, and we didn't see any sign of that beast around. With this, my cousin decided to get out of the car, and so did I, because we had to get that calf and drag it to the side of the road, so that we could drive the car along the road, and also, so that that animal would not be run over by another car that passed by. But even so, we took the calf by the legs, and we were dragging this animal to the side of the road, and soon we heard a noise on the road, and we got scared, and decided to get back into the car, because we thought that this big black animal could be surrounding us, and hiding, and when we were about to get back into the car, the creature came out from behind the car and attacked my cousin on the side of the road and bit the bar of my cousin's pants, and that creature began to pull him into the bush. At the time I took a fright, because it was a thing of surprise, this attack of this beast, because I never thought that this animal was hiding behind the car. At that moment of terror, while my cousin was being dragged by that enraged animal, I began to kick and punch this strange creature in the head, and soon the beast felt the blows and ended up releasing my cousin, and at that instant my cousin got up quickly from the ground, and we quickly got into the car, and that black creature that was very large came running and hit the car door, but to our luck the door was closed. Finally, my cousin started to start the car, but the creature, to our amazement, stood up and stood on two legs like a man, and that to my surprise, put his clawed hands on the car handle and managed to open the car door, but my cousin was quick and managed to close the door, and to me it was clear that this animal was a werewolf. But after this moment of terror, my cousin started the car, and getting out of that place, then I was looking at that werewolf, who was still standing for a little while there on the road, and that scary creature had a very bright glow coming from his eyes, which made it look more macabre. But after all this terror, I was more relieved that we had managed to escape from that werewolf. As soon as we arrived at my house, I asked my cousin to spend that dawn at my residence, because I had a bad feeling that something worse might happen if my cousin returned to his house, and he was afraid and stayed at my house. We spent the early hours of the morning talking about the werewolf event, and how this creature could even exist, that we had only heard of, and only seen in movies, and talked about the intelligence of this beast, that it hid behind the car, and attack us by surprise, and also that the werewolf opened the car door. But after that day, I went back to my normal life, but when I imagined that werewolf, and the scene of terror that I spent that day, already gave me fear, but it was only that too, because fortunately, the neighborhood where I lived had many houses and lampposts, and the streets were all paved, and I did not worry much with that creature, because hardly a werewolf would prowl around here. But surprisingly, one day, I met a street dweller from my neighborhood at the bar, and he was telling people that he saw, at a certain dawn, a creature that looked like a black dog, going through the garbage in a supermarket in my neighborhood, but he still claimed that this animal was standing, walking like a person, and the street dweller said that when he saw that creature, the beast was on its back, and as the beast couldn't see him, this walker left the place hiding, and for this reason. He only slept near the emergency room, because it was safer, because in my neighborhood, the creature that he saw could meet him at dawn, and that would be the end of him. But I kept thinking, how could I be wrong about this creature, because this werewolf can appear even in well-populated neighborhoods, and by the description that this homeless man spoke of the creature was the same description of the werewolf that attacked my cousin on the road, and also by the fact, if true the beggar, the werewolf stays in the woods at dawn, but also sometimes can get in very populated places, as neighborhood for example. Of course people took in jest what this homeless man said, but the fact is that I saw this creature. After a few days, I looked for this homeless man to hear something new about the creature, but he also did not see anything else at dawn. But what remained for me is that werewolves exist and are able to mount a clever attack, and that was my story. Before we go to the next horror story, if you liked the story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel.